Welcome back to Wooden Sticks. We had the week off last week for the holidays, so I hope you enjoyed Rico Blasi, the head coach of the St. Thomas men's program. A little bonus time for Rico. I got to take care of my Tommies. As always, looking forward to see what they can do with their new building next year. And I hope everybody had a wonderful and safe 4th of July holiday. We were busy out at the racetrack. We had big crowds. We had the wiener dogs. We had hot dog eating contests. We had sweltering weather, but we had a great time. And if you're out there, I know I connect with a bunch of hockey fans in the paddock as I do my horse racing thing each and every race day. We had a blast out there, but now it's time to get serious and kind of focus in on the tasks at summer. And I thought it'd be a perfect time to connect with the guest we've had on before, and Tony Granato, longtime great player, great coach. He's been there, he's done that, pro, college, you name it. But right now working for the NHL Network, and also during the regular season, worked the Chicago Blackhawks. This guy's phenomenal. And really some keen insight. I want to get more of a national perspective on what Billy Guerin's done so far and maybe where this thing is going. And I thought it'd be really interesting to hear Tony's perspective on some of the details of what the Wild have in front of them, specifically Marco Rossi. But I want to get his thoughts on Vladimir Tarasenko, a guy that Tony's covered on the national side for years. And so it'd be really interesting to hear what Tony has to say on some of those areas. And we're also going to promote a place called The Ranch. And, you know, we live in a world where we're starting to figure out that, you know, for pro athletes, but specifically for hockey players, it's not just the physical fitness, it's the wellness on the mental side. And there have been some struggles. We lost Mark Pavelich, a legendary player from Minnesota who played for that 1980 Olympic team. He had some real struggles away from the rink. And so that's kind of been a catalyst to build this facility. It's a nonprofit. And Tony and Granato and I will be a part of a big fundraiser in August for the ranch that you can be a part of. And if you're a hockey fan, and especially of a certain age that loves the story that Miracle, the movie, provided, and that great, unbelievable achievement in 1980 at Lake Placid by the Red, White, and Blue, then you're going to want to hear some of the details from Tony on what we're going to have cooking here with a golf event and a meet and greet later next month. So that'll be fun to connect the dots with on that wonderful event that Tony and I will be a part of. And then I want to get his thoughts on the Blackhawks. I want to get his thoughts on the Florida Panthers, who have now been to the Stanley Cup in 3 consecutive years. And I want to hear if Tony knows of any details of why they've been able to do it, because, man, it's tough when you play to the middle of June and you're able to turn around and start that journey right back up again in late August, early September with training camp and all the rigors that develops. Hockey is a grind, man. And not just the 82-game schedule, but the 2 months for the Panthers these last 3 years where they've been able to make a run to the very final day of the season. So it'll be really interesting to hear his thoughts. And then, you know, some of the tie-ins that he has, playing with a guy like Wayne Gretzky, playing in big markets like LA and New York at Madison Square Garden. Tony's got a really cool background to maybe handle some of these conversations. I want to get his thoughts on Mitch Marner and how that played out in Toronto, now a member of the Vegas Golden Knights. So the Wild, they're going to have to deal with him on a little more regular basis. So really fun stuff coming up today on the show. Before we get to the meat and potatoes of the serving today, I want to make sure I take time to thank our sponsors. And that always starts with my dear friend, John Schweitz and Minnesota Masonic Charities. You know, when people think about the Freemasons, they often think about the secret handshakes and those crazy hats. And of course, they always have those cool pancake breakfasts. But Minnesota Masonic Charities would prefer that you think about the work they do right here in our community. Places like the Masonic Cancer Center at the U of M or the Masonic Children's Hospital. And of course, the Masonic Home over in Bloomington. Just a few examples, folks, of the important work that Freemasons support here in Minnesota. They're part of the largest fraternal organization in the world. Masons have consistently answered that call when it comes to charitable needs. I'm so happy that Minnesota Masonic Charities and John Schweitz have chosen our podcast as a place to help spread the word. And I'm looking forward here in the coming weeks to months to continuing that great momentum. Thank you to the Minnesota Masonic Charities. Great time to get outside. I'm up north right now as we record this. I'm up in Pequot Lake, so we got to tip of the hat for Onyx Fish and Onyx Maps.
The weather is warming up. That means it's time to put your augers away and it's time to grab the boat. Let Onyx Fish help you find the next best bite. The Fish app offers the most comprehensive fishing tool for increasing your success. Use the Fish app to find new places to fish and sort lakes by species, abundance, trophy, and keeper potential. Onyx Fish also shows you hot spots, lake-by-lake regulations, and private and public land ownership information. Download Onyx Fish on the App Store or go to onyxmaps.com/fish to get more information about the app that is changing the game.
And last but certainly not least, we got to hear from our friends, Lexus of Wayzata and Maplewood. All right, back with the great Tony Granato next here on Wooden Sticks. All right, welcome back to Wooden Sticks. As we mentioned earlier, recording today from the Aquarius Home Services studio. Excited to have the second kick at the can with my dear friend Tony Granato from the NHL Network. Tony, how's your summer going?
It's just started, buddy. The free agency frenzy, or all of the first few days of free agency, I was busy working, and I got out of there on the 4th of July. I was in studio in Secaucus, New Jersey, but I made it back up to Eagle River for a few days and kind of settling in, trying to figure out all these teams on whether they improved or not and who made the biggest splash in the free agency market. So it's kind of fun sorting things out to see who made the big splash.
Well, it sure feels like the Vegas Golden Knights are the big winner, at least right now. We won't know until all of this plays out starting in October. But once again, they're able to get a high-end guy in Mitch Marner to go along with a roster that's already pretty deep.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because everybody was hoping that on July 1st, the bidding wars would start. And I think there's probably about 20 teams that thought they had a legitimate chance of getting Mitch Marner on their squad. But, a few days before that, the rumors started that potentially there was, it started with tampering rumors. And then it started with there was possible trade talks. And the next thing Toronto was able to pull a deal off and get some assets in return for the trade. But I think, like you said, Vegas, big winner. Yeah, probably because they got the best player that was available out there. But at the end of the day, you know what it means adding a name on a piece of paper and looking at a lineup thinking, okay, they got better just because they added a player. Doesn't always work out that way. And the proof in the pudding was with Nashville last year when they added all those players and everybody thought, oh my gosh, watch out for Nashville. They might be a Stanley Cup, not just contender, but somebody that could be, be there at the end of the dance. And obviously it didn't work for them. So lots of times in the summer, there's lots of overreaction, overexcitement. I think when the season starts and things settle into it, I do like the fact that Marner and Eichel will be together. I think from the standpoint that Marner can learn from Eichel the way Eichel learned from Stone and Pietrangelo and the other veterans in Vegas when he got there, the difference between being a good player and being a player that when the game's on the line, they win games. And that's what I think I've come to respect Jack Eichel on that, because going into that situation in Vegas, I was not sure he was a winner. And he certainly proved me wrong on how he played both ends of the rink and how he led and how he was able to bring that team to a championship. So I think he has the ability to impact Marner in that type of a way.
Well, I want to talk about Mitch Marner specifically and him admitting some of the pressure that he put on himself and feeling some of the pressure he had on himself being a star player on the Maple Leafs in that market. It's like a fishbowl. Tony, you played in LA and New York. How much can going from Toronto to a place like Vegas maybe free him up?
Well, I think for him right now, I think he is relieved to get away from it. When you're in it and you're part of it, you just accept that as being, an NHL player and being part of the Maple Leafs or being part of the Rangers or being part of the Blackhawks or one of maybe the Montreal Canadiens, the original 6 teams in particular. I think there's an extra amount of, I don't want to say pressure. I think excitement of being part of that franchise and knowing the history that went along with it. Certainly the fans in Toronto the past few years with the lack of a Stanley Cup, and I'm going to say they've been fine in the playoffs, but being fine for them isn't good enough. There's 32 teams. One team wins, and then the other 31 teams, all wish they could have done a little bit better. And in Toronto's case, you think this year they take Florida to Game 7. That's the team that won the Stanley Cup and really kind of plowed through some of their other opponents. Toronto might have been the second best team, or if they had gotten through Florida, which they almost did, they might have won a cup. So they weren't far away. And I think Marner took a lot of criticism, as did Nylander, as did Matthews, the big guys in the playoffs, that the fans always expect more and expect them to score the winning goal every time the game's on the line. And that's somewhat unfair pressure that those guys are thrown at. But I think they also understand that's part of the territory. So I like Mitch Marner as a player. I think he's given Toronto fans a lot. I think they should be thankful for what he did give them. But I also think that they should understand they're the ones that kind of forced the hands of the Leafs the past few years of saying, hey, this isn't good enough to just be a good playoff team. We want to be the best. And they always found ways to blame one of those three guys or all of those three guys for the reasons that they weren't able to advance. So the Leafs are without Marner, and let's see if they're better or not. I don't think they're better. I think they can be as good and potentially be a little better in playoffs. But that a lot falls, on the direction and some of the decisions that they're going to make moving forward on replacing Marner in a different way and figuring out how to be a better team.
And you mentioned it. Florida did steamroll through the playoffs, except for that series with the Maple Leafs, where they were down 2-0 in the series, down a couple of goals in Game 3. Tony, you mentioned it stretched to 7 games. I marvel at what the Panthers have done. 3 straight years now, they've played until the middle of June. And training camp feels like it's right around the corner already. We just passed the 4th of July. It's just a couple of weeks removed from that Cup run. How are teams like the Florida Panthers able to recharge the battery enough to come back year after year? This is 3 straight years now they've been to the finals and continue to play at that high level, because to me, the season keeps getting stretched out longer and longer, and it starts really with training camps in early September. It doesn't feel like a long enough break, but yet they just keep on finding ways.
I think you can just say one word: they're special. Let's not kid ourselves. They had 8 guys play in that Four Nations tournament as well. Some of them came out of that bumped and bruised, but they didn't miss a beat. And when playoffs come around and the game's on the line, in a big game situation is there, they step up. And it's not one guy. It's every single line, and every single player on that team understands, the situation, understands what's asked of them, which is a lot. But they find a way to perform at that level when needed. And so where does it start? Does it start with the coach? Does it start with the GM? Does it start with the goalie? Does it start with Tkachuk? Does it start with Barkov, Bennett? I don't know, but all those pieces together, it's a special puzzle, and it's a special team. And every other team, you looked at the draft, you look at some of the free agent signings, you looked at every single team now thinks bigger, stronger, tougher again. Whereas a few years ago, it was faster and speed and all of this different types of things that's going to win you games in hockey and the skill. And ultimately, it comes down to teams that can find ways to compete and battle through injuries. We all know what the grind of a playoff thing is, to win 16 games over 2 months after playing 82 regular season games. It's for somebody and a team that is able to find a way to dig down and give more than they thought they had going in. Because, every year the playoffs get better. Every year the players get better. But the game comes down to the battles and the ability to mentally be tough enough to keep fighting and keep grinding and keep finding ways to get through it. And I think that's what Florida is really above everybody else, and just their mental toughness of being able to face whatever situation's thrown at them and be able to smile with it and say, hey, that's part of the deal. We're down here 2-0, or a call goes against us, or we get an injury. It doesn't faze them. They just keep going. They actually get inspired by facing some sort of adversity or struggle. And that's really remarkable. That's why they're the champions.
I'm glad you brought up Tkachuk, because when I look at Matthew Tkachuk now, I think back to who you were, Tony, as a player, and you were a great offensive weapon. You scored a ton of goals. I remember a stretch in LA where you had 3 straight years where you nearly touched the 40 goal mark in every single year. Yet you played with grit. You were able to get under the skin of the opposition. You were kind of a glue guy. Players like Wayne Gretzky, who were at the time and maybe still the best in the world, wanted you on their line, wanted you around them, even off the ice at dinners and as roommates back in the day. So from your perspective, how valuable is a player like that on the Panthers? Because they've certainly got depth. You mentioned the coach. They've got arguably one of the best goalies in the world. But Tkachuk, that trade with Calgary, to me, seemed to flip the script for the Florida Panthers and brought them to this now where they're a dynasty.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you going back to that being kind of the deal or the moment that the Florida Panthers became, serious contenders. And Tkachuk's mentality, his attitude, his ability to play injured. We saw him the 1 year, a couple years ago at the end of the thing, playoffs, he couldn't pick his arm up. He played through something. This year, he got injured in the Four Nation thing, found a way to somehow tape himself together to be able to go out there and compete. So he can play at 50%. He could probably play at 30% and be effective. A lot of players cannot do that. Nobody plays at 100% come playoffs. That's a fact. But if you're at 60 or 70, you're just trying to survive out there. You're just trying to get through the game. But he finds ways to be impactful in those games, running on fumes or beat up. It doesn't bother him. And what that is, that shows Bennett and Barkov and the rest of that squad, that message that, hey, it doesn't matter. We're putting that jersey on. We're going out there for one another. We are going to battle like crazy and find the way to get it done. So he set the thing. I go back, Gorgie. We mentioned that you just brought up the trade there. I think as you go back and you try to figure out what was the turning point of that organization, this is going to sound kind of silly, but I stand by this. So his dad, Matthew's dad, Keith, in the middle of that season, he was fed up with Florida as their first year there, and he made a comment about being soft and they don't play hard enough and they don't compete hard enough. And he was right. And Paul Maurice, in his first year there, after replacing Andrew Brunette, who did such a phenomenal job in place in Quenneville there, they had great coaches and they had great things in place, but they were missing something. And they were missing that edge and that competitiveness and being able to be honest with one another as teammates. The coach told them all the time, hey, guys, we got to play harder if we're going to win. But when the old man said it, when Keith said it, and Matthew had to go in that dressing room, and I'm sure some teammates said, hey, what was your dad saying about that? And he probably lifted his shoulders up and said, no, he's right. We don't play hard enough. And Paul Maurice probably told Matthew, hey, your dad's right. We don't play hard enough. And then all of a sudden, for whatever reason, that team became a different team. And it could have been coincidental, the timing of him saying it and whatever else. But the bottom line is until the players, as a group, can get to that next level, and the level that coaches ask of players is demanding and it's high. But the players can go farther than what is even being asked of them when they as a group push one another to get to that point. And that's what that team has done. And whether it's Barkov, whether it's Bennett, whether it's Tkachuk, whether it's Ekblad, whether it's Forsling, whether it's Bobrovsky, somebody in that room has had such a big influence on one another now that they all, Seth Jones goes there. It doesn't matter who comes into that dressing room. Marchand goes there and gets 10 goals in playoffs and whatever he did, 15, whatever he had. I mean, it's just remarkable of what that team is able to do as far as how they are able to get the most out of one another.
It's impressive for sure. And, you mentioned that nobody's healthy during the playoffs. You had some long playoff runs. For hockey players at the NHL level, when they give that much, and it's an 82-game grind during the regular season, and then sometimes in playoffs, you're adding another 6 to 8 weeks. What is the month of July like, knowing what's ahead in especially August now and into September? What did you do in July to get yourself in the right physical and mental state of mind to start that journey all over again?
Gorgie, it's a great point because at the end of every year you are exhausted, and my wife will tell you this, and And I would do it at the end of every season, and I do it just to, get her reaction. I said, hon, I think I got to retire, man. I got nothing left. I can barely get out of bed. And this is, the first few days after the season. You just, all of a sudden, the season ends, and then you really realize how tired you are. When you're in the playoffs, you just find a way. You get dressed, you get on the ice, and you just find a way to get enough energy to perform. But when it's all said and done, and at the end of the season, you realize, oh my gosh, how did I just do that? And the demand of what you asked yourself is exhausting. And then mentally, you're like, wow, this is going to be tough to do again. So you tell your wife for about 2 days, I think I'm going to think about retiring and whatever. And she knows you're lying to her, because about 4 days into it, you have already started your training for the next season. And you say, hey, I'm feeling pretty good again. And what you said a second ago about mentally, it's all about the mental toughness of saying, you know what, I actually know that the players, when they're able to grind through it, they're proud of themselves. And then they, for some reason, can find and say, I can't wait to do it again. I can't wait to get beat up and bruised up and get another opportunity to play in a playoff series. And so really that's kind of what it is. Mentally, you got to get through it. And then once you do, man, you get fired up and charged up to get, all right, summer's great, but let's get training camp going and let's get this thing underway again. It's kind of the mentality that starts probably right about now, probably mid-July is where players start getting anxious to get going and get in training camp and get with their buddies and do their thing.
It's remarkable. I've had the chance to cover the Wild now for almost 20 years, and they haven't had that long run in my time there, but I still think about how long the season is. When you take a look at September and training camp and the preseason and the 82-game schedule, and then it is remarkable. But again, these are the best of the best, and they find a way. Let's turn it back to the Minnesota Wild, Tony, here for our listeners that listen locally. Bill Guerin didn't see the right opportunity as far as free agents go. They were looking for a frontline center. I think he'll try to add that maybe during the season at the trade deadline. But they did bring in Vladimir Tarasenko. And this is not Vladimir Tarasenko in his prime. He's probably at the tail end of his career, but he's good friends with Kirill Kaprizov, who Bill Guerin is also in the process of re-upping on likely an 8-year deal here for an astronomical amount of money. What, in your eyes, can Tarasenko bring the Minnesota Wild?
Well, I think one of the things you just said is probably the most important piece. You can bring somebody in the room that Kaprizov can be excited about having there. Not that he's not excited about Boldy and Zuccarello and Eriksson Ek and Rossi. They got a really nice group of forwards that obviously can complement each other well enough that Kaprizov's been able to have the years he's had. But when you bring in somebody like that's won a cup and is a goal scorer and a guy that can play top 6 minutes or move around your lineup a little bit and give you a little bit of spark, I think that was a positive thing on Billy. And in Billy's defense, everybody goes out hoping and thinking, okay, we can improve, we can add, a top 6 player or certain other holes that they might have in their lineup. And to be quite honest, that free agency thing on July 1st, with all 3 of the Florida guys signing that we thought might get to free agency, and then the trading of Marner and Besser goes back to Vancouver, and Tavares stays and signs in Toronto. I think, as fans, we were really excited that there might be a lot of movement and a lot of teams would have chances to fill holes and bring new players into their organization. And that it was pretty much handcuffed, from the start of free agency, that a lot of those guys that were anticipated to be open on the market weren't there. And so I think from that standpoint, I think Billy probably felt pretty comfortable with the group and the team he had this year. And I think that, to do minimal stuff sometimes is actually the best move, is not to do too much. So adding Tarasenko and a couple other little pieces, I think, and potentially, being able to set himself up for some moves moving forward, I think are what Billy probably felt was right to do for the organization.
And I like the addition of Nico Sturm, a guy that just got done winning his second Stanley Cup with Florida. He's a guy that wins a ton of faceoffs, that can help the penalty kill, and he's a big, strong centerman. So I think the depth of Minnesota in the middle is something that they're looking to at least build here in the offseason. And a big part of that's Marco Rossi. And he's a guy that we've seen tremendous growth from Tony in the last 2 seasons. He's an undersized guy that's not afraid to go to the net, so I think you can relate to that. And he's a guy that's produced. And back-to-back years, he's been in the top 6 during the playoffs last year. For whatever reason, Ryan Hartman caught fire, and there was a little flip of the script where he had to get bumped down to the 3rd or 4th line for a while. And they've been at an impasse here. From a player's perspective, how much of it is the agent? How much of it is the player? But clearly, they were offered 5 years for $25 million. Wasn't what they were looking for, and we're still kind of waiting and hoping it's not going to be a training camp type of holdout situation. But from a player's perspective, how much of this is the agent? How much of this is Marco? And what do you think kind of brings the two back together from player to team to make this thing work?
Yeah, you'd never like to, as teammates or fans or even management, to have a situation where there's, some hard conversations that are had. One, obviously, Marco not playing as much in the playoffs as he had hoped to was the first one. But ultimately, that is the most important thing that players have to realize. Listen, at that situation and that time of the season, the coach is going to put on the ice who he feels will give them the best chance to win. No coach will ever put a player in a position, I like this guy better, I'm going to put him on the second line instead of Rossi. Hartman deserved to be in there. So from Rossi's standpoint, he's only 23 years old. He is a guy, like you said, he got 20-plus goals the last 2 years. He's getting better. But that moment, he should have realized I needed to be better at that time or moment to not be pushed down to or taking some ice time away from me. And so that's a learning point for him. So the agent part, this is why I'm trying to tie this all in there. The agent has to understand that as well. And he's got to say, Marco, the reason you didn't play more minutes in the playoffs was because you didn't perform to the level you have to. You have to learn from it. You have to be ready for that next opportunity and be able to handle it in a different way. That's a good agent. A bad agent says, hey, you got screwed. And, hey, we're going to take them to the cleaners on this thing. If they don't, we're going to try to get you out of there. That's a bad agent. So I stand with Billy and I stand with Johnny Hines on this one from the standpoint that Heinze's going to put on the ice, like I said, who's going to give him the best chance to win. So I hope Rossi gets the contract he wants. I hope he can forgive if there is any hard feelings right now and come back. And next year he's gone from 21 to 24 the last 2 years. Get to 30 goals, kid, and get there and be the hardest worker in training camp. Don't worry about the contract. Worry about being like Kachuk, and we talked about all those guys are in Florida, that when you get in that room and you're part of that group, that you go through the wall for one another. And if he does do that and comes out of it with that mentality, he's going to be a great player. But if this thing lingers and he misses part of training camp and he's complaining that he was on the 3rd line or 4th line and he didn't get enough ice time, then I think you're in for some things in the future that won't be fun to deal with.
Hi, everyone. This is Dawn Mitchell with a reminder. Please tune in to our podcast every week, Dawn of Sports. You can find it on Talk North Podcast Network.
It does feel like this is agent-driven, and they have a job to do. They're trying to get the maximum amount of money in term for their player. But, Marco's been such an intricate part of the club off the ice. He's a really good kid, Tony. He's fun to be around and super easy to work with on the media side. So, yeah, we're hoping that that's part of the maturation process, too. And sometimes, your agent's doing his job, but you also have to step in as you get a little bit older and say, all right, this enough is enough. I want to play. These are my guys. I want to be there. Let's get something done. And I think as time goes by here this summer, I'm confident that'll get done. And then, the Kaprizov thing is super interesting because if you're Kirill Kaprizov, Tony, and, I have been lucky enough to get to know him, and he is driven by one thing and one thing only. He loves the game and he wants to win a cup. And he's seen now friends of his like Tarasenko and now Kulikov twice with Florida have that experience. And from getting to know him, it's all he cares about. Like it's myopic almost with how much he cares about it. I think of Crosby and the conversation we had a couple of months ago about how hard Sidney worked to make that happen. This is who Kirill Kaprizov is. So if you're sitting there this summer and your agent and Bill Guerin are negotiating your next big deal, and the Wild haven't made it out of the first round of the playoffs, this is just a fact. I don't celebrate it. It's painful for me and a lot of the fans in this market. do you roll the dice and take the 8-year offer, or do you bet on yourself and take a shorter term deal to make sure the team is going in the right direction? Because it feels like the Wild are on the come, but if you're Kirill Kaprizov, you're not looking for feels, you're looking for the cup.
Yeah, that's one that he's got to feel comfortable on, whichever one he does. He's got to tell his agent, listen, this is an organization that I think we can win with. I want to be part of it. That's what Billy Guerin wants to hear. That's what his teammates want to hear. And this is the time, in the summer, that there is a lot of calls between players to one another. Hey, how you doing over there? You going to get this contract done? Hey, I think we got a great chance, once we all get to camp. I think there is a little push between one another, on a really good, healthy team, that they can call each other up and just say, hey, listen, quit screwing around, get this deal done so we can get back to work. We don't want to worry about you, not being in training camp. Like, there is a lot of that chatter that goes on between the guys, at least on a really good, healthy organization where players are comfortable with each other. So I think that's healthy. Hopefully that's what's happening in Minnie. Kaprizov, I'm sure that was one of Billy's priorities on July 1st, was to let him know that, hey, we understand we have an opportunity here to get this done. Let's start working to make sure that does happen. With what you've told me about him and what I've seen from him, man, oh man, is he a big part of our league, not just the Minnesota Wild thing. So he is a special piece to lots of great hockey in the future. And boy, I'd love to see that contract done and him be there for a long time.
I've been around a lot of hockey players, Tony, and I haven't been around many that care more about getting better. And, I look at Kirill and what he's brought to the table and what he's played with and played through. It just feels like a guy that at some point is going to have the opportunity to lead a team to a cup. And so for all of us in Minnesota, this has been the star player that they've looked for forever. And, the Wild are a funny study because they hired Jacques Lemaire right off the get-go. And that did two things. Number one, it allowed them to play above their weight grade right away. And they made that run of the Western Conference Finals in year 2 or 3 with Jock, but they never bottomed out. So they never had these high-end draft picks like a McDavid, like a Celebrini, like a Connor Bedard in Chicago with the Hawks. They've never had that bottoming out. But what they did find with Kirill is a 5th-round steal that's become the face of the franchise, the all-time greatest player in Wild history when he's all said and done. So it feels like Cups find these type of guys, and that's why this summer and into next season feels so important for Billy Guerin and John Hines and the rest of the staff over there, because they've got these known commodities like Kirill. You mentioned Boldy. We've talked about Ross. We haven't even dipped into the blue line with players like Bouillon, who's up and coming, Faber, who's established. This feels like a team that literally is right there. But boy, this summer and into next season feels awfully pivotal to bring it all together. And that's not easy to do, as you know.
Yeah, I agree with all those points you just made, Gorgie. And I've always enjoyed learning about the Wild and how things are going, as a Blackhawk broadcaster and somebody that works in studio for the games and Secaucus for NHL Network. I don't get to see the Wild every day and see behind the scenes of how it's going. And you are the first one I call because your passion and your love for what your job is to be able to follow these guys and be around them. It's an exciting team. I mean, I get that. And so yeah, the stuff in the summer, you have to look at it and you try to sort it through it and say, hey, that's just part of the business. But ultimately, everybody is a person. Everybody does have feelings. And so just honest, hard conversations and direct ones are always the best. And John Hines, I do know. I worked with John Hines. I do know Billy Guerin. I was part of the staff in Pittsburgh and coached him, and was also he was on our management team there. There's no sugarcoating anything. He's going to be very straightforward and honest. And as players, that's what you should want from your general manager and coaches. So, I hope things just kind of come to a nice little resolution for all the players involved in the contract stuff, and the Wild can get out and get off to a great start to next season.
That'd be the plan. Now let's segue to part of the reason we get to see each other every summer, and at least I think that's going to be a regular basis here in August. place called the Ranch. It's teammates for life. And, we've talked about the pressure of being a superstar in big markets, Mitch Marner. We've talked about the wear and tear of the playoffs, mentally and physically, not being able to get out of bed. These things that I think as fans that come to the rink, there's an underlying feeling of, these guys are really tough. They're elite. But I think behind closed doors, away from the rink, I think a lot of wives could speak to this, and maybe some of the kids of these players that have played a long time in the league. There's a lot that goes into this. And I've been lucky enough to be a part of, part of the fundraising side of the ranch. And for our listeners out there, Tony, this is a place that's really, because now we're finally starting to understand how much players need to be taken care of away from just the physical part of the game, the mental part. Mental health, wellness and health is something that we're finally starting to at least get a hold of, and we've got work to do. For our listeners, though, how would you best describe the ranch?
Well, you did a good job there. It's a good start. I mean, the ranch is a place up in northern Minnesota, up by St. Cloud. That's in Sauk. I forget the part of Sauk. I'm blanking out on
Sauk Rapids.
That might be right, but anyhow, it's a place for hockey players. Mark Pavlich was the one that was, before he passed, was the face of trying to get it up and running. He had his struggles. Our gold medalist from our 1980 team, he had his struggles, and the ranch was something that was dear to his heart because it was a place that was going to have an opportunity for healing and a place to go get some space for anybody in the game of hockey that needed some help, whether it be through addiction, whether it be mental health struggles, whether it be just they weren't right. And so I became part of this when Clint Malarchuk, a good friend of mine, became the president. And the ranch is a place that we have open for former players and for anybody that's in the game of hockey that might need some sort of extra help along the way. So I think you made one point there that you said that it's hard to fathom an NHL hockey player having struggles. But the truth of the matter is that as whether you're a hockey player or not, there are challenges in life sometimes that are overbearing, and you come to a point where you do need help. And we are trying to get the word out there as best we can as former players to each other to say that if you are struggling, we are there for you and we want to help you. And that's what the ranch is all about. So we got a golf outing coming up. You are a big part of the meet and greet the night before, which is Sunday, August 17th. Last year, you did such a phenomenal job. You had Mike Ruzioni, Bill Baker, Mike Ramsey, Buzzy Snyder. I think you had Phil Vercoda. And I might be missing one of the Olympic players from the 80 team there. And we learned a lot about the 1980 team. We've seen movies, read books, seen hundreds and hundreds of interviews from these guys, and you found a way to get more out of them. Where I walked out of that room and said, man, I did not know that about that 80 team. And so these guys are sensational human beings because of their love for Mark Pavlich. They've all become a part of the weekend of the golf and the meet and greet. And if you want to get the chills again and hear the USA chants and see these players and be able to hear the stories from inside the locker rooms, pregame, postgame, what it was like on the bench, come to this meet and greet because they are sensational human beings that share their experience with us and make us feel like I felt like I was a little kid again listening to these guys. So that's the meet and greet the night before. And then the golf scramble, all the money that we do raise goes to the ranch. The ranch is a nonprofit that wants to open the doors for like we talked about earlier, just people in need. And it should be a really nice couple days for us hockey fans and for the people that understand the importance of what the ranch can mean to lots of others.
I'm glad you brought up the guys from the hockey team. And it seems like every time we gather, and I've had a chance to work at a couple of different events with these guys. In fact, I just finished up last month a leadership summit that the Minnesota Wild put on, and they had a few of the Olympians at that, guys like Buzz Schneider, and just how they're still so close-knit and how they still have that locker room camaraderie. And it came out last year in that meet and greet. It was incredible to watch. but you could feel it. And you can't fake that, Tony. You know, you've been around the game a long time, just like me. You cannot phony up that closeness. And you understand now, looking back, like at the time, it was this incredible accomplishment. To me, the greatest sporting event I ever watched was the night and the day they beat the Russians. But now you see the talent they had in that locker room and how close-knit they were, and you understand they were able to do unbelievable things, and they still have that connection, 45 years later, which is remarkable.
It is. And the thing that really, I like you said, you remember it. I remember it like it was yesterday too, and watching it in my basement with my brothers and sisters and seeing that win, and it was on delayed. We all know about how we had to wait for it. So back then, we know that you couldn't find the score out, through the internet. So we all kind of waited for that delayed game again and watched them beat Russia, and like the impact that had on us as not just hockey players. That's not fair to say that just because we were hockey players we were able to enjoy it. Everybody enjoyed that in a special way. And to see the movies come out and the stories and the books and hear all these people, for the ones that weren't old enough to be there and see it like we did, I just hope that they're able to get a taste of how special, not just the victory was, but how special, and kind of goes with what you're saying about how special these guys on this team were to be able to accomplish what, no question, the greatest victory in probably all of sports, not just Olympic sports, not just for Team USA. What they did in Lake Placid probably will never be, there'll probably never be another sporting event like that. But the people that were a part of that team, I think we should continue to celebrate them for as long as we can and pat them on the back, tell them how great they are and how much they meant to your life, and the enjoyment of what they gave us was something that's going to last for as long as I live. I know that.
It's a great event. You can head to the website. The Ranch Teammates for Life is where you would find it on the internet. And it's August 17th with the meet and greet, August 18th with the golf. And having seen this thing play out and now hearing the stories from Clint Malarchuk about the impact they're having on lives and the inspiration through Mark Pavelich and the struggles that he had away from the game later in life. You'll come once, you'll come back every year. I promise you that. It's that kind of event. It's super fun. It's super low key. The players are super approachable, and it's worth your time. So I hope the listeners out there right now will take the time to check out the Ranch Teammates for Life. And as we segue, Tony, into the off season here, I loved getting your thoughts. And I guess the one team I forgot to ask you about, and it wasn't on purpose, I just kind of got going down a certain path. But the Blackhawks, to me, are starting to really compile some really good young talent. And we've seen this movie before with the Hawks. Do you feel like, in the next couple of years, this team can make a step up and become a playoff team, and then maybe a few years after that become another fixture in the Western Conference? Because it feels like they've got a good young core.
Yeah, Gorgie, before I talk Blackhawks, Sauk Center, Minnesota. It came back to me. I apologize on that.
I kept thinking Sauk Rapids.
Sauk Center, Minnesota is where it is. And I apologize about that. But yeah, back to the Blackhawks. They're exciting because they do have a lot of young talent compiled. I think the one guy that, since we are Minnesota, a lot of listeners from Minnesota, Sam Renzel was sensational. I don't know that I've ever seen a kid. Well, I have. Rob Blake was the last young defenseman that I saw jump into an NHL lineup in the middle of a season and say, "Oh my gosh, this guy is poised. He's got confidence, and he makes plays consistently, both with and without the puck, at a whole different level than you would have ever expected from a kid that's walking into a pressure situation like that." So he was a huge, big surprise to me as how he handled that. Oliver Moore, who came from the Gophers as well, had a good little start to his career. But everyone knows about Connor Bedard, Frankie Nazar, who went over and won a gold medal for being part of that team overseas in Sweden that won the gold medal in the World Championship. He is a dynamic, fun player that will be, a complementary player to Connor Bedard as they grow together. And They're young. I mean, their average age this year with a lot of the veterans being moved to different organizations. You got Nicky Foligno as the captain. Seth is out of there now. You got Connor Murphy as an older player. It's 30 and under, and most of these guys, the back end is going to be probably 5 guys that are going to be 24 and under. So it's going to take some time. But they got some really nice pieces and the foundation pieces for many years to come. So I don't want to get too optimistic because I think it's still going to take some time. But it's exciting watching these young kids grow into it.
The league's better when the Blackhawks are relevant. And Connor Bedard is just the start of this story. You mentioned some great young names, cool tie-ins here to the local market with the Golden Gophers, but I'm super impressed with the young players that they're starting to accumulate, and I understand what they did, making that move with Seth Jones. It worked out for both parties in my eyes, and they just need to find the next Corey Crawford now, and they'll be all set.
Yeah, it could be Spencer Knight. Spencer did. I thought Spencer's start there was sensational. And then he leveled off a little bit and struggled a little bit, but that's all part of the growing pains of having a young defense as well as kind of learning what type of shots they're giving up, and the communication between both the goalie and the D is something that takes a little bit of time as well. But I think he has the potential to be that guy, but we'll wait and see.
Well, he's had big moments already. You look back at the World Juniors when he led the U.S. to that gold medal. He's been in big spots, and to me, Tony, the World Juniors is that testing ground where that pressure is pretty similar from what we've seen over the years. If you can lead your team into that pressure cooker and survive, especially playing that position, it usually bodes well. And he's been a goalie that I've tracked for a while, so I'm glad you took the baton and ran with it. I do think he's got the potential to be, that anchor, that go-to guy in the net, and he's kind of been in the shadows in Florida because of Bob and what he's been able to do. So now getting a fresh go and being the man might be the best thing for this kid.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be an exciting time for the Hawks. I think the fans are ready for it, and hopefully they get off this. You said something that's really important. The league needs the Blackhawks to be good again, and they certainly have some pieces in place now, and now it's time for them to continue to see the growth. I think the fans want it in the results ASAP. Everybody's in a hurry to say, okay, well, last year they finished, 31st out of 32. The year before the same. We got to start jumping, and this might be the year where they can climb a bit. But I still think it's a few years down the road before it's a legitimate team that could win in the playoffs.
Always love your insight, love your passion for the game, and look forward to seeing you next month at the Ranch, Teammates for Life. That event is going to be spectacular and always fun to connect with you, Tony. So thanks for taking the time today.
Yeah, you bet, Gorg. And the golf's on the 18th at Legends, which is a beautiful course as well. So if you got 4 golfers, sign up and come out there and see some of the Olympians and some old pros and come play golf with us.
It's going to be an awesome event. That is the great Tony Granato. Quick little break here, and we'll wrap up another edition of Wooden Sticks here on the Talk North Podcast Network. Well, as you could definitely depict from the conversation, Tony is a guy that sees the game from a unique perspective, and I love diving into his knowledge on specifics with agents and a coaching mentality. And I had no idea the impact that maybe Keith Tkachuk had on the Florida Panthers 3 years ago, before they ever made this run to now maybe being a dynasty in the National Hockey League, and calling a team out for their lack of effort and physical play and grit. Interesting to hear that story. I had not heard that, and it makes all the sense in the world. When you know who Keith Tkachuk was as a player and you see who his kids are, you can pretty much fill in the blanks here. But it is rare that a dad's going to make that type of statement. But it's also rare that a dad has the kind of credentials that Keith Tkachuk certainly has. So, and then now it makes sense because in the 2 years now that they've won the cup here, these last two, he's been an unbelievably big time part of that celebration in the locker room, at the elbow room on the beach, the bar where they celebrate to the wee hours with their great fans in South Florida. So super interesting to hear Tony's opinion there. Loved his insight on the Blackhawks as we get a little sneak peek at a division rival for Minnesota. And then, of course, I really enjoyed what he had to say about the Minnesota Wild and some of the decisions that have happened and maybe that will be happening in the next few weeks. We've got Tarasenko in play. We've got Nico Sturm. And now the Wild fans are waiting to see what kind of deal Kirill Kaprizov will sign. We think that'll happen here at some point this summer. But the bigger one, at least the one that's up in the air the most, is the Marco Rossi situation. And I thought it was very telling what Tony had to say on behalf of that scenario. And he's not wrong. Marco is a big part of this team. He's a well-liked guy in that locker room and around the rink. And sometimes, if you have an agent that's very strong-willed, and there's a tug of war there that I get you have to have, and you want an agent that's going to fight for you and fight for what's best long-term. But I also believe that at some point, if you're Marco Rossi, you don't have to worry about where you were last year in that series against Vegas. You have to worry about where you're going. And he still has so much of his career in front of him. And if and when this deal happens, the Wild are going to make a pretty large financial offer to him, $5-6 million a year. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know what the term's going to be, but then you have to understand that, you put the disagreements down, you let what happened last year stay and what happened in the rearview mirror, and you move forward. And hopefully Marco can do that because I don't think he's reached his potential. I think he's a terrific hockey player, and I think he could be a big-time part of the Wild and where they're headed. It feels like a team that is sitting on a couple of really good years here moving forward, and I'll be super curious to see how that contract negotiation plays out because there was talk leading into the trade period where Bill Guerin was going to basically allow another team to make an offer and then have to match. Well, nothing has happened. So I find that to be maybe an impasse now where they've got to get back to the drawing board on both sides and come to an agreement. And maybe Marco signs more of a bridge deal where it's 2 or 3 years at $5 or $6 million a year, and you have to prove it. But you also get to see how it's going to play out with where you lie in that lineup and how big the plans are from the organization for you. And so there's a lot of moving parts involved. And here's a guy in Tony Granato that played tons of games in the league, coached tons of games in the league, head coach, assistant coach. So he's kind of seen it from all perspectives. And it was kind of fun to hear what he had to say about Marco and his agent, and maybe we'll see how that plays out as the summer progresses. I'm looking forward to some more great hockey conversations throughout the off season here. Tony mentioned we are going to definitely get together with Clint Malarchuk before that big event at the ranch. Clint Malarchuk, longtime goalie in the National Hockey League, and having got to know him at the fundraiser last year in the meet and greet, the guy's got the cowboy hat. He's got all the shtick. He's fantastic. And looking forward to having him on in early August as we get a little closer to that big event. So check him out, The Ranch, Teammates for Life. That's the website you need to find. And if you can be involved, I promise you, as a fan of the game, you will not be disappointed in what you see and how that thing plays out. It is a really, really well-organized, well-orchestrated, fun event, and you can get up close and personal with some incredible players. And obviously the cause is certainly worth your time and money, because what this ranch is going to provide is years and years of stability for players after the game is over, when they hit some tough times. And everybody in life, in all walks of life, eventually there are folks that are going to need a helping hand. And that's what this place is all about. And to hear the stories last year was very inspirational. So I hope you'll join us. That's August 17th and 18th. And again, that website will have all the details for you there. Appreciate everybody listening today. And if you have any recommendations, any guests you'd like me to have on, you can always ping me on X, the old Twitter machine, at Gorgomatic21 is where you find me. And we'll talk to you next week here on Wooden Sticks.